Hello. In this video, I would like to talk to you about the gains from trade as they arise from comparative advantage. It's at the beginning of the course of microeconomics, and it's an application of it's a very good application of opportunity cost. And the questions that we are addressing are the following: Why do people and nations choose to trade and become interdependent among themselves? How can trade make everyone better off? Again, how can trade make everyone better off? Trade does make everyone better off. Otherwise, trade would not take place. But what is the mechanism behind how trade makes everyone better off? And it's not obvious. And it depends on comparative advantage and does not depend on absolute advantage. And that's what we'll be illustrating in this video and part one, and there's a part two also. Okay, let's look at the definitions of absolute and comparative advantage. Absolute advantage occurs when an individual or country is more productive in producing the good than other individuals or countries, or it uses fewer inputs, lower cost than another producer or country. Think of somebody that can produce a good at less hours than another person. Then the person that can produce it at less hours has an absolute advantage. Okay. The comparative advantage, on the other hand, is depends on opportunity cost, and a individual or a country has a comparative advantage if it can produce a good at a lower opportunity cost than another individual or country. Okay, and oops, come on, up you go. It does that? I don't know why. Okay, here's an example. Of absolute and comparative advantage. We have Argentina and Brazil. Each have 10,000 hours of labor per month, and they have the following technologies. So Argentina can produce 1 pound of coffee by allocating 2 hours, or it can produce 1 bottle of wine, but it requires 4 hours. Brazil, on the other hand, it produces 1 pound of coffee. It has to allocate 1 hour, and to produce 1 bottle of wine requires 5 hours. So the question is, which country has an absolute advantage in the production of coffee? Which country has an absolute advantage in the production of wine also? And same thing with comparative advantage. Okay, absolute advantage is very straightforward. You just look at the coffee, let's say, and you look into Argentina and Brazil, and you find the country that produces it at less hours will have a absolute advantage. So in Argentina, producing 1 pound of coffee requires 2 hours. In Brazil, 1 pound of coffee requires 1 hour. So Brazil has a absolute advantage in the production of coffee, right? Less hours. Yeah. On the other hand, Argentina, for wine, it requires 4 hours. In Brazil, to produce 1 bottle of wine requires 5 hours. So Argentina has an absolute advantage in the production of wine. Yeah. Okay. So that's straightforward. So let's look at the absolute advantage. We said Argentina wine. Well, that kind of makes sense also. Argentina does have a very good wine production, and Brazil coffee, and that makes sense too. Brazil coffee beans are really good. Brazilian coffee is very good. Uh, so let's look at the comparative advantage, which is a little bit more difficult to compute because it requires you to express one good in terms of how much you're giving up of the other good. And here we have it in terms of how many hours it requires to produce one particular good. So the way to go about it is, well, if we allocate 2 hours, we can produce 1 pound of coffee. If we allocate 4 hours, we can produce 2 pounds of coffee. But we can take those 4 hours and allocate them to wine. So in that case, then we have one bottle of wine. So we can produce one bottle of wine for 4 hours, or we can produce 2 pounds of coffee for 4 hours. So we have to put the hours in the same amount of hours. So the way to proceed is as follows. So for Argentina, 1 pound of coffee, we said, requires 2 hours. How many pounds of coffee for 4 hours? And we said, well, the question mark here is equal to 1 pound times 4. Just to reverse this, 4 over 2, and you get 2 pounds. If you want to do it, using the simple methodology here. So 2 pounds of coffee. Well, we know that. That's easy here. But sometimes it's not easy because this is not in 1 pound, but it's more than 1 pound, or less than 1 pound, etc. So 4 hours, 2 pounds of coffee. 4 hours, we have one bottle of wine. So one bottle of wine equals 2 pounds of cost of coffee, or not equals cost. That's the opportunity cost. Okay, so the opportunity cost of one bottle of wine is 2 pounds of coffee, and the opportunity cost of 1 pound of coffee is the inverse, half a bottle of wine, right? Okay, so it works like the exchange rate between the say the Canadian and U.S. dollar. So 1 pound of coffee costs half a bottle of wine. Okay, okay, so that's for Argentina. Argentina. Okay, and let's take a look at Brazil. So Brazil, 1 pound of coffee, 1 pound of coffee requires 1 hour to produce. Okay. We know that producing one bottle of wine requires 5 hours in Brazil. So, in 5 hours, how many pounds of coffee can we make? Well, that's straightforward. We can make 1 times 5 over 1. We already know the answer. 5 hours, 5 pounds of coffee. Right? We can make lots of coffee, I guess. um, we can take those 5 hours that we produce 5 pounds of coffee and put them into the wine sector, and we can get one bottle of wine. So 5 hours. This is given to you of 5 hours of labor requires of inputs requires produces one bottle of wine. We get one bottle of wine. So one bottle of wine equals 5 pounds of coffee. Ooh, quite expensive. This is in Brazil, right? And we know Argentina. In Argentina, one bottle of wine equals 2 pounds of coffee. So clearly, the Argentina has a lower opportunity cost, and therefore it costs only 2 pounds of coffee here. Yeah. That's it. Thank you. I'll give you another example in another video. Thank you.